Hi everyone, my name is Sia. I'm an audit partner at BDO South Africa, and I head the automotive sector. And welcome to the roundtable discussion.
I'm Mike Whitefield. I've had the opportunity of being in an incredibly exciting industry for the last 44 years, and currently a part of the journey that Stellantis is undertaking to industrialize and play a significant role in the South African automotive industry going forward.
My name is Denise van Huyssteen. I'm the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Business Chamber. I previously worked in the automotive industry for over 20 years. I've been here for about 3 years, and I'm very excited about the potential that we have here. And we work with the businesses around us, and it's about the collective coming together for the greater good of the economy.
Obviously, the objective of today's discussion is to discuss related automotive issues affecting South Africa and the African continent. Mike, I think the first time I saw you, it was Denise during the manufacturing showcase.
In Port Elizabeth.
In Port Elizabeth, yeah, where you obviously announced the 3 billion rand investments, which we're going to get into the details about. But before, I just want to maybe quickly touch on your very impressive CV. And I'll most probably not do justice to it, but I just want to touch on a few things. You're obviously the current managing director and CEO of Stellantis South Africa. And Denise, I think I'm a bit ashamed of this, that I didn't know that Stellantis is actually the third biggest automotive OEM in the world, which is impressive. Your experience basically spans over 4 decades. I know you were with the other OEM for a number of years before you obviously then joined Stellantis. You've worked everywhere, Mike, from what I could see.
I've been very fortunate.
I've
had great opportunities in an industry, and I think Denise will admit is once you're in the automotive industry, it's very difficult to give it up. No, definitely. And I see you've obviously then been the president of AAAM as well as NAMSA. And obviously, you recently stepped off the presidency or the chairmanship of AAAM. So yeah, I think Denise, being my co-host, welcome, also representing the Nelson Mandela Business Chamber.
Thank you.
So Mike, like I said earlier on, we are going to touch obviously on the 3 billion rand investment. But I think the interesting thing is the decision by Stellantis to obviously come and invest in the Nelson Mandela Bay. And Denise, whenever lately I hear everyone talking about Nelson Mandela Bay, the first thing that comes into my mind is the Bay of Opportunity. Maybe I'll just give you an opportunity just to maybe update us on that. How has that been going? Because I've seen everyone that I speak to, there's actually a huge support, Mike, around or behind the Bay of Opportunity.
So it's a great opportunity.
I think it's the work that Denise and the Chamber did.
I was going to say it's a great opportunity to talk about the Bay of Opportunity, but essentially that's the positioning that we are doing for Nelson Mandela Bay, and we have a lot of potential here that can be unlocked if everybody collaborates and does the right thing. And what we've done to unlock that is we've set up a trade and investment desk. And we've been very well supported in terms of our partners like BDO, and we also have the province behind us with that. And then the next step is we're busy setting up a skills desk where we need to focus on technical skills, because that's key for especially automotive industry. And we're in the process of recruiting a person to run that, but it's very, very targeted in terms of where we're wanting to go. And then we're also in discussions with Exporters Eastern Cape, where we're going to set up an exporters desk to stand alongside. So the Bay of Opportunity is getting quite a few legs to it. And we're going to be doing a lot of marketing around the city, because we're a 2-port city. We need the north to south rail corridor to work well as well, so that we can really become a diverse manufacturing base on the African continent. And auto industry is key, because we have almost half of the country's automotive employment is here. And I think what people often lose sight of is the depth of the component sector. When you look at what we actually have in Nelson Mandela Bay from that perspective. And that's where you get a lot of the downstream job opportunities that flow. So the Bay of Opportunity is starting to come to life, and having players like Stellantis here, and also Hive Hydrogen, which we saw at the Nelson Mandela Bay Manufacturing Showcase, where they're going to be setting up a 105 billion rand green ammonia production plant. All of that is key in terms of anchoring our manufacturing in this part of the world.
Because I think one of the key, and Denise touched on it, that the actual auto manufacturing is really a multiplier effect. So one manufacturing job will create 3 or 4 downstream or upstream in the industry. So while the actual assembly process or the OEM doesn't necessarily be the biggest employer, the multiplier effect of that industry is quite significant.
Okay. And Mike, maybe just, I think before we get into the details, would you mind just maybe telling us a bit more about Stellantis? And I think mostly the reason why Stellantis decided to come and invest in the Nelson Mandela Bay.
So thank you, but first of all, thanks for the opportunity to come and spend some time with both of you today. If we look at Stellantis as a very young company, while it has 14 brands that it owns globally, many of them over 100 years old. Stellantis itself is only entering its 4th year. It was formed through the amalgamation of putting together of PSA and FCA, so Fiat Chrysler and the Peugeot group, and has really defined how brands can work together. And as I say, 4 years old, 3rd largest in the world at the moment. Very innovative, looking at the full sphere of mobility, so covering all aspects of mobility through it. And one of our key objectives, which we really summarize as our Dare Forward 2030 plan, is not only growth in the business, growth in EVs, but if we look at the region that we sit in, is very much a regionalization approach as opposed to globalization, in the sense that our objective is by 2030 that 90% of the vehicles that we sell in a region, so the region that we're talking about now is Africa, Middle East, Turkey and East. So 90% of the vehicles we sell need to be produced in the region, and 70-odd% of the components that we use should be sourced within the region. So very much looking at expansion within that region. Stellantis plays a significant role in in the region that I've just mentioned. And while we, as a manufacturer, have probably the greatest number of plants in the African continent, the one area where we're not is in South Africa. And when you consider South Africa as, in terms of TIV or total industry volume size, double anything else in the African continent, it's critical to be in it. And as Denise mentioned earlier, it's a very well-established industry. It has a supplier base, but more importantly, it has a very consistent government policy. And what do we look for? We look for consistency, certainly in government automotive policy. We look for a well-established supplier base, and the industry now is very export-focused. So part of that decision process was looking at the policy structure, the supply base here, obviously the infrastructure that goes around it, and the fact that South Africa is a significant part of Africa. And Africa we see very much as the last real frontier in automotive. So today you have a new vehicle market in Africa, probably 1.2, 1.3 million new vehicles. Obviously the used is far greater than that. But the expectations, as you might have heard from people like Dave Coffey and the team from AAAM, is in 2035 we see a market in Africa anywhere between 3 and 5 million. And with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement moving forward, not there yet, but very much moving forward, particularly on automotive, we see the need to be in Africa, particularly in South Africa, very important to capitalize on that future potential in Africa. So what motivated our decision? Very simply, consistent policy, infrastructure, established automotive, and the fact that Africa is very much what we see as the last frontier.
That was actually a very good synopsis that you gave there of everything. But why the Bay of Opportunity and not Tshwane, where you have a special economic zone as an example, or maybe elsewhere in Africa or the Middle East for that matter?
Well, I think, as I said, we're already very strong in North Africa.
Yeah.
So we have a plant in Algeria, 2 in Morocco, we're in Tunisia, and we're also in Egypt.
Yeah.
So from a CKD manufacturing, and in South Africa is the only area where we weren't. So very important, we felt, to be there. Secondly, the plant, which will be set up as a totally standalone manufacturing operation, will approximately 65% of its production will be exported. And from a logistics point of view, you need to be at the coast.
Yeah.
So we evaluated along with other stakeholders, government, etc., where best. And if we look at all the aspects we were looking for, proximity to port, established industrial zone, availability of labour, it was a fairly natural decision to either, it had to be at one of the ports, but fundamentally, if you look at it, and as Denise referred to, PE is the core of auto in the country.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Mike, because I mean you've touched on three very important things. I mean, usually in South Africa, people always complain about infrastructure, but I think in your case or in case of Stellantis, decided to move to South Africa because of the good infrastructure. And another thing, Denise, is the policy issues that people are always complaining about. You now just touched on the issue around skills. Because I think that's another, especially if you look at the Nelson Mandela Bay, where there's a bit of a shortage. And maybe Denise, you can also maybe come in with this one with regards to the skills desk that was developed by the Business Chamber. But maybe first, Mike, on
I think before we get on to the skills, just the one important point is an automotive investment is a long-term investment. So obviously we understand the issues relative to port challenges, logistic challenges, electricity supply, but these things are being addressed through a combination of public-private engagement, which I think the Chamber is playing a big role in. So for us, we're not short-term, and we operate and have plants in a number of countries throughout the world. So the variability of things do happen, but for us, the foundation's there. And we have a view and a belief that the challenges that we have, that many industries, and we're part of that, would face, are challenges that people are working very hard to overcome. We don't believe they're there forever.
Yeah, and I think you're right in terms of the long-term outlook, because when you look at Africa as a continent as well, you know, when you look at the current new vehicle sales volumes, it's very low still, but one has to have the long-term outlook, and if you look at where the rest of the world is, the growth has to come from Africa.
And our investment is very much scalable. We're not going ahead and creating a plant that has a 200,000 capacity that we can't fulfill. But the way we've designed, and that's one of the beauties of going green fields, is we've designed it on the ability to scale up as we add models or as demand grows. But back to your point on skills, very, very, very important. So the big challenge or the opportunity for us, and that's one of our commitments in terms of what we are doing, is to really create those skills. So a big part of the process over the next 2 years is going to be the training and development of skills. For me and for all of us, it's very important that we try and create a Stellantis culture rather than trying to take from other competitors in the market. So it's a unique opportunity to take a different approach, to skill up, and as part of this partnership with CDC, obviously with the Chamber, but with AIDC, is to create and grow that skills set as we go forward. So yes, the skills are necessarily there, but neither am I going to find them in many other markets in the world, and certainly in Africa. So it is part of our investment, it's part of the project with government is to actually start that process of upskilling. Sure, we will bring in certain critical skills to pass on to as we develop, but the objective very much is to grow a new
skill base.
All right. But I think what the core of the skills that are here are actually very good, because when you look at our global competitiveness and the quality of South Africans who work in the auto industry compared to other plants around the world, I think that's also a key factor. And then if you also look at Nelson Mandela Bay specifically, we have two of the biggest systems integrators in the country are based here, and they get into all sorts of high-tech stuff, more on the components supply chain, but that support is here, and I think that is a testament to the type of capabilities that we have here, but we obviously need to strengthen them, and we need to have a much stronger focus on building technical skills, because I think in the country as a whole, we've lost a lot of that focus. You know, there's been a big push towards academic and getting degrees in all sorts of disciplines. But if you look at what the country actually requires, I mean, I was chatting to somebody today, when you have the ships, for example, docking in at our ports, we don't have fitters and turners that can do maintenance of the ships. They have to come from Cape Town, you know, or elsewhere. So we need to make sure that we're developing artisans, engineers, those kind of skills needs to be the foundation of our manufacturing economy. So there's a whole re-education that's also required throughout the chain, right from school-going level through to tertiary.
Correct. I think the one thing that automotive does bring is well-paid but skilled career opportunities.
Yeah.
And we accept we've got to be part of building that. The skill set evolves as our industry evolves. So if you go back 15 years in this industry, body shops were all manual. Now generally all automated. When I mean body shops is where we put all the panels together into a car. But so it's a different skill set that you need to operate in a body shop. But the skills are there. Sorry, the capabilities there, the people are there. We need to continually upskill.
Absolutely, and I think the big thing that people also often forget is you need to retain manufacturing in your economy so that you can strengthen your skills and also your technological capabilities as a country. You know, so I think people underestimate the importance of having a manufacturing sector, and we're very fortunate in South Africa to have the automotive sector. And we need to continue to build that, and maybe it might be good to shift the conversation. You spoke a bit about APDP, which has been an excellent initiative in terms of getting this industry in place, but there's changes that are also required if we want to take this forward. So maybe if you want to maybe talk about what you think could further enhance automotive
I think as
sector.
I said in the beginning, one of the foundations that any automotive, or in fact any industry when you invest, is the stability of policy. South Africa's had a succession of automotive policies that have continually built on the previous one. And we now have a policy that has a vision, or a policy that's effective until 2035, but is aligned to a vision which we call the South African Master Plan. So the program was designed very simply to achieve 60% local content, 1% of global production, obviously transformation, expansion in the Africa continent, embracing new energy vehicles. But we must remember that policy and one of the success factors of that has been it's a collaborative effort between all stakeholders, so it's government, auto manufacturers, component manufacturers, and our social partners, the unions. And that discussion and setting that master plan and the policy to deliver it was probably started 2018. The industry changed dramatically globally. We see where EV is going, obviously not at the pace that everyone wants, but where that's going. We had COVID, we had different challenges from a logistics point of view. So the policy did allow itself, it had a review process, and I think the time is right now that we revisit where the policy is, where we are against those objectives, and I'm not saying change the objectives, but we need to look at what are the enablers, are they still going to get us there, and change if necessary. And I think a good example is something, if you look at the South African passenger vehicle market now, 60+%, probably high, 65% of that market is now below 400,000. And that trend is growing all the time. But the 70% of the vehicles in that are coming from outside of this country. So we really got to find a way that we support, that we're building not only for what we need here, but also for the export market. So that's one very simple example. The other one is the trend towards new energy vehicles. And new energy vehicles definitely does not mean full battery electric vehicles. It's combination from hybrids, fuel cell, full battery electric vehicles. But we've spent a lot of time as industry and government engaging of how we can actually address that. But we haven't gone far enough. And if we don't move faster, we're going to be left behind. So a very important element of this review that we are saying as an industry we need to engage everyone in is to realign the enablers to ensure that we still get to our objectives that we set from the master plan. So that is something that's on the table at the moment. And I'm sure that collectively we'll find a way to do that, because it is important that we don't deindustrialize in the automotive. And that's something we've got to be very careful of.
Yeah, and like you earlier on, I think you touched on the free trade, the Africa Free Trade Agreement. And I think, Denise, I remember the last time we had spoken to Martina, she had actually indicated that there's one African country that has not signed off on it. I just want to understand, like, what impact is it likely to have on Stellantis in terms of it being able to, I guess, achieve all the goals that the company wants to achieve?
So I think first and foremost is that the creation of free trade agreements not easy. It's really is a journey. And if we look at, from an automotive point of view, through the AAAM, very, very, very well led by Dave Coffey, we've played a strong role in the formation of automotive within the Continental Free Trade Agreement. So the agreement is definitely making very good progress. There are, I think, pretty close to just under 90%, so 89% of all tariff items have been agreed. 2 weeks ago, His Excellency Secretary General Kelly Mene was in PE. We met with him in Kabaka, and it will create. It doesn't mean it's suddenly going to open up. It'll create an environment for us to capitalize on the growth that's coming in Africa from automotive. I said it's the last frontier, that at least Africa can play a role in the value chain. And the value chain is far more than just exporting the raw materials. And we always use an example of copper that is mined in Zambia, shipped out of Durban in ingots, and comes back as wiper motors from offshore, something similar. So we really need the real objective or the opportunity under the Continental Free Trade Agreement is opening up trade in Africa for what we see as the last automotive frontier. There are many challenges, logistics, currency, those type of things that have got to be met. But it's a starting point to create that and to see how Africa can enjoy the value addition in that automotive value chain. So we definitely do not see manufacturing operations in every single plant, every single country in the world. But there's no reason why a country like Namibia cannot produce a component that plays a role in new energy vehicles by beneficiation of their raw materials. So there's a lot of a process of trying to bring different countries within the value chain and within Africa into that automotive value chain, because the defining starting point, and that's the one area which is still under negotiation, is the what we call originating materials, where we're saying that for vehicles to flow, you need to have at least a 40% Africa originating material. So everyone can contribute to that, so you can accumulate it. So that if 20% of the value added or originating material comes from South Africa, 10% somewhere else, that vehicle still achieves 40%. So it's a way to go, but a lot of incredible progress made. And we believe, and we're all working towards February next year, that we can get the rules of originating material and automotive agreed, which can then open up to the next steps. But there already are certain categories of vehicles that we can trade in Africa for those who've already enabled it. The Act, so for example, minibuses is already open for Africa. So big opportunity, I think, for Africa, but more importantly, I think if we're talking from a South African point of view, South Africa, with what it already has established, it can play a big role in that.
Because I think also the challenge in these markets is getting the balance, because everybody wants to manufacture vehicles, but there's a whole ecosystem around it. And it's to get the current countries orientated in terms of what they can be best at. And I think South Africa, we tend, or my view over the years is we always just went in with a South Africa mindset, and we must produce everything and everyone must receive on the continent. But we need to get those compromises in place so that everybody wins, you know.
And that's very important, is we've got to see this as an opportunity for everyone. So if you take today's new vehicle market at 1.2 million in Africa, South Africa's at 500,000 of that, and if you the whole of sub-Sahara, so between North Africa and South Africa, maybe only makes up 100,000.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about getting to 3.5, 5 million, it's going to come out of this middle.
Yep.
And that's a huge opportunity that we shouldn't allow to escape from South Africa, from industrial, it's not South Africa, it's Africa, from an industrialization point of view. It's very easy for all the various far more advanced economies or manufacturing bases to supply us vehicles. But we're not adding value, we're not creating jobs. And industrialization and job creation is not only a South African critical initiative, which we see government talking about a lot at the moment, but it's in Africa, even more so from an Africa point of view.
It's something, if I can also just interject here, in terms of low carbon emissions. You know, I think that's obviously a key factor when you're assembling vehicles and components nowadays. And something we're looking at in our local economy reinvention think tank, because we're looking at manufacturing opportunities and what can we do that maybe globally there's a market for. So for example, if you look at the auto industry and you take a product like hemp, we've got lots of hemp here. And we're looking at ideas where seating, plastics, you know, you could have hemp in those products. And if we could do that in a way where it's low carbon footprint, then potentially we could also be sending components to other markets and not just Africa. Do you think that's viable? And also for your plant that you're setting up here, as you look at localization, will you also be looking at carbon footprint as part of that?
So obviously we have, as Stellantis, very clear objectives from a carbon neutral point of view. And one of the unique opportunities that we have when we start a greenfields or grassroots operation, and right now if you go out to Kocha, it's a bare piece of land. The earth moving equipment hopefully is moving onto it very shortly, this week hopefully. We have the unique opportunity, we can build a plant that addresses those concepts. So one very simple thing is traditionally paint shops are heated through gas in many examples. So we made the decision fairly recently that this paint shop will be electric, and as much as possible we will use renewables to generate the energy. So that is part of the process that is much easier for us to do than if you've been established for 30 or 40 years as a plant here. So a very big part of our focus is to move in that direction, and obviously the other aspects of carbon neutrality, and there's many that come into it in the supply chain and things.
No, but you raise a good point, because I didn't think about how difficult it is for existing manufacturers who have old plants versus having a greenfield site like you have. So there's a lot of advantages.
So very much with our design and approach is to see how we as carbon neutral as possible.
I think then also linked in this topic is obviously the discussion of EVs, because I mean the whole idea behind converting from ICE to EVs was around green energy and all of that. Denise, we were talking outside that obviously the shift was on EVs, but the business chamber through the think tank initiative, you guys actually thought beyond that, because you said, look, EVs are not just going to be the solution to the problem, but there's also hydrogen, there's other sources of energy that can be used to try and get to a position whereby we're using clean energy. What's the strategy with regards to Stellantis?
So I think everyone is direction is far more now, more new energy vehicles than just BEV, battery electric vehicles. And we see on an ongoing basis, that uptake globally has not been as fast as everyone had anticipated for EVs for a number of reasons. Obviously, there's the cost element. There's people also want a degree of choice in not being told you have to do. But we all certainly we have a very clear target in terms of moving towards new energy vehicles. But the big difference now going forward is new energy vehicles is not just battery electric. So as you say, it's plug-in hybrids, it's carbon, it's fuel cell, plug-in hybrids, fuel cell, hydrogen, full battery obviously is also there, but it's a combination and not one technology will define. It's advancing so fast. You've got solid state, you've got other opportunities coming up. So directionally, very much towards new energy vehicles, but the actual platform technology will vary place to place. I think Africa is a long way off from
the rest of the world.
Well, no, not the rest of the world, but moving, let's say, 100% to battery vehicles. There's other solutions that can provide a much better opportunity in Africa.
If you think about the change that you referenced earlier in terms of COVID, you think about technology, everything, the way the world is moving now, it's going at such a fast pace in terms of the change, and it's quite radical. How do you think this is the biggest changes ever facing the industry, and do you see this as the biggest shift to happen in a long time in terms of where the industry is going?
We've seen significant change. Yes, it is a big change in terms of technology, but other significant changes is also moving to fractional ownership, or even the days of people not even wanting to own a car. So there's a lot of change in ownership patterns. We see this accelerating trend to smaller vehicles. You see it on the roads here. So I think there are many, many changes. This is one significant change in terms of moving from traditional ICE engines to other forms of energy, and it's happened very fast, but it's certainly not going to be the last change. I think we're going to see a lot more.
And I suppose from a leadership perspective, it also requires agility and innovation and different type of leadership today.
Well, I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You need to be flexible, you need to be adaptable. And there are a number of cases, and I was reading on the plane down this morning, but of companies that didn't have that agility and flexibility. And just one that comes to mind is Kodak, who had 70% of the photographic market, if not more. It doesn't exist anymore. So, and we're seeing today, if we look at the top-selling new energy vehicles, number one in the world is BYD, number two is Telsa. All the traditional brands follow quite a long way after. So, yes, big changes, but the importance which we are seeing is the ability of many of the established brands to also, the ones that succeed will be the ones who can adapt and be flexible to accommodate this change.
And I think that's also where South Africa fits in, because if I look at the flexibility and the making a plan element that South Africans do well, I think this is an opportunity that we should be leveraging, and I think that's why we're pushing this think tank of ours as well, because we think solutions can come from here.
Well, I think a good example is, which I think is a very positive announcement from government, is raw material beneficiation, specifically on strategic materials. If we go back to the days of the PMG and metals that play a big role in catalytic converters and things, we didn't add enough value. We added value, but not enough.
Not enough,
So I think what's very important is how do we ensure, and it's not only for South Africa, although the focus for us is South Africa today and what the government's doing, but how do we take that raw material and create value to it, rather than just exporting? And I think those are the opportunities that as South Africans we can certainly capitalize on.
Yeah, Mike, so Stellantis is obviously now going to be the 8th OEM operating in South Africa. Are we likely to see more OEMs moving down to South Africa or in Africa in general?
So I think two things is obviously if you're going to invest in Africa, South Africa is a very attractive automotive destination to invest. One of the reasons why we're here. Government is continually working with OEMs to attract them. I think one positive aspect is that government has a policy that applies to everyone. It's not to OEM number one gets more than OEM number two, so there's that transparency. The willingness, I think, of government to work together and adapt policy to grow the industry is strong, and yes, it's going to be competitive because there's very good reasons to also invest in Egypt, to invest in Algeria. So we need to make sure that, back to the point Denise says, is we can't live on the past. We need to remain adaptable and flexible as a country to attract that investment. And certainly in the process that we are going through of being a new investor, we have found a very strong willingness from sectors of government to work with us to find the most tailor-made package without going outside of what the policy does. So will there be more manufacturers? Yes, if we continue as the country making sure we have access into the markets, into the African markets, into other, like we do with Europe. So one, keep the skills development, keep the infrastructure there, but very importantly be prepared to adapt to future trends, because we mustn't believe that we're the only country that has an automotive policy. There's some very, very successful growth stories in automotive where both private and public have worked very well together. So short answer, yes, we will have more, but it's going to require a lot of work collectively from public and private to ensure that we can remain competitive with other countries on the African continent. And I also include our social partners, so labour in that, and that we need to have the flexibility, we need to have the productivity, all that needs to come into it. And the opportunities there for us to take. Denise's point is in South Africa we are flexible, but if we need to act now to maintain and that we actually have an industrialized direction on automotive. I'm speaking about automotive, and rather than deindustrialization, because it can turn very fast.
No, and I think you're touching on some important points there. And if you think about it, it's actually a privilege to have an automotive sector here in South Africa. And when you look at countries like Australia and Thailand, what they've been through, is especially Australia though, in terms of the automotive industry, where they had a framework for the industry and then they let that go and then they lost the manufacturing. You know, so for me it's very important that as South Africans we value the industry and then we keep adjusting in terms of how things change so that we can retain and grow it.
The one thing that will guarantee our future is we remain competitive. If we lose competitiveness, there's no one's building or investing in automotive in this country because we like it. It's a business decision. Obviously there are many factors that come into it, but the fundamental issue is, can I produce a vehicle in the right quality, time, and doing it at the right cost? That's where we decide where to build.
I also think where we are as a country now, we've gone through some tough times. And when you look at where we are in terms of logistics, energy, what we've been through, but now it's starting to improve. We've got challenges, but I think the openness now in terms of willingness to work together and collaborate, when you look at on a national level, you've got government and business working together. On a local level, we've been doing that for some time. You know, and maybe there's a way we can find each other that can really get the balance right. You know, I don't know what you think in terms of this window period that we have now.
The issue is we don't have in Africa a great public transport system. It's fact. So mobility is very important for people. But we need to focus on affordable mobility. And that could be two-wheelers all the way up. There's a study that came out recently that 51% of all mobility in Africa by 2030 will be two-wheelers. But the point I'm really getting at is it's beyond just vehicles. We need to find a mobility solution that's affordable and people can actually earn a living, create economic freedom. A very classic is what we've seen with the Checkers 60/60, this type of delivery. It only works if the cost of running that two-wheeler or whatever it might be is less than the revenue it earns each day. And we've got to develop that model. We've got to create, for me, one of the biggest challenges we have to remain relevant in the South African auto industry and African auto industry is address the issue of affordable mobility. And we're seeing today more and more of the vehicles that are coming into this country are the affordable vehicles. We are not producing enough affordable vehicles in South Africa for our own market in Africa. And that's one challenge we need to address.
But maybe also, I mean, those are important points you raise, and you're going to be building buckies or pickups here. Do you also see that as a segment of the market besides the affordable entry-level vehicles? Do you see that also as a key sector in Africa, Middle East, because that's your market?
It's one of the sectors. And a very important sector as we see throughout Africa. But not ignoring the fact that, and over the years, we've all had the opportunity to travel in different countries in Africa. But if I think over the last 20 years going to places like Nairobi or Luanda, where you've seen this progression of people from moving around in SUVs and 4x4s to majority of small automatic vehicles. The road infrastructure is a lot better, so the opportunity is there. But we need to give people access to those vehicles.
This was a very great conversation and insightful and very informative. I think we basically just wish Stellantis all of the best. And I mean, we're here to support. I mean, I'm not originally from the Nelson Mandela Bay, but ever since I got involved in the business chamber, I see all of the hard work that they're doing and the opportunities that obviously come by being based in the Nelson Mandela Bay. Thank you for your time. Denise, I'm not sure if you've got any closing remarks.
Well, thank you for your support, and it's nice to have people from outside of Nelson Mandela Bay being positive about the city, because I often think we are our own worst enemies, and you often find local people talk your city down. But I think we've been able to demonstrate that there is a lot of potential here, and we've got a willing business community. There's a lot of business leaders from across auto, but also pharmaceuticals and beverages and other sectors in this economy that want things to work and want it to succeed. And I think if we get it right, we can change the trajectory of our city. But also when you look at congestion, for example, at the Durban port, we have an ideal solution here. We've got 2 ports. And also in situations where the country loses business to other countries because our ports aren't efficient, we should be using this advantage that we have. You know, and we've got the capabilities here. We've got a very strong component sector linked to the OEM. So I think we've got the ingredients, but it's up to the people now to make it happen. And we need to take advantage, as you spoke about, in terms of the public-private partnership opportunity and everybody working together, but for common goals. And we need to focus on what unites us, you know, as in terms of the needs of the economy, and to address very serious issues like unemployment. And I think through the automotive sector, we can make inroads there, but we need to make sure it continues to get the support that it does, and it needs to be enhanced through this South African Automotive Master Plan. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity, and we certainly look forward to finding a way that we can add to what is being done here. And our investment decision was made before we really understood what was happening with the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber and the interaction between both business and public sector here. But it's very refreshing, and certainly I think is a benchmark to what you can find that we should be benchmarking through other metros in the country. I believe that what's been done here can be replicated. It's not going to happen overnight, it's a journey, but people must believe in where they want to go and be prepared to compromise and find a win-win for everyone to get there. And certainly what we witnessed here in the short time that I've been involved is very encouraging, and we look forward to playing a role in adding to that journey.
You know, and I think what's key as a business community as well is the technical expertise that comes with that, and I think that's where the partnerships can be strengthened for the greater good of the economy. So we welcome the role that Stellantis will also play in that. So thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to being able to visually demonstrate that. And thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.